I saw a new battery technology, I'd be investing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it has to come quite a ways for it to. I don't know.
There's a lot of suckers that buy stocks that promise exactly that, and they're bullshit stocks.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can't follow the business guys. Business guys are trying to spin.
What do you think? How do you think that would? Let's say hypothetically that they could develop this. How do you see that playing out as far as like how do they price that into an economy and make it to where it's like okay, it's affordable and accessible, but then at the same time like that's gonna would disrupt a lot of shit.
Yeah. We're in favor of what's called disruptive innovation. That's why there's like an entrepreneurial party called Disrupt or something. It's a economic theory developed by a Mormon Harvard economics professor by the name of Christian something. I remember his first name was Christian. It might be his last. Either way.
Rosencreutz.
Christian what?
Rosencreutz.
Okay, whatever. Either way, this guy, what he did was he was looking at the development of hard drives. Because hard drives had so much investment in them, they often dominated a field and then died very quickly. So he said that this was like an increased evolutionary scale. So he could look at the longer term prospects of companies by focusing on these companies that lived very quickly and then died. And what he noticed, like he tried to understand why are these guys succeeding so quickly and then losing out to some new entrant every single time. And he looked into it, and his theory is disruptive innovation. His theory was that each one of the participants was following sound business theory as they were marketing to their customers and maintaining innovations that their customers wanted and were interested in. But as they were doing that, answering the needs of their customers, one of their people, there'd be like some new entrant that did some slight iteration, like they did it a little bit heavier and a different style of hard drive, which would be not backwards compatible. It wouldn't even be useful to like the 80% of their customers. But because this new guy did it, he marketed to the 20 that weren't being met. And because he grabbed that market share, it improved his own technology to the point where it was better than the other one, and then he conquered, right? Until the same thing happened to him. And it happens over and over. As the people focus on the desires of their customers, they miss out on tiny complaints from a small percentage of their customers that then become met by a new entrant, and the innovations and technologies that new entrant engages in topples the existing hierarchy. And that's why they call it disruptive. So the current theory in entrepreneurship and business, and especially Silicon Valley, is try it, and it's great. If you fail, great. If you succeed, great. Everything is a new attempt to dismantle an existing norm, whether it be Google, Apple, Uber, Twitter.
Right.
All of them are subject to conquest.
I get it, but in this context, we're fundamentally talking about energy, which is the most valuable thing, and effectively making it as efficient as possible. And there's always going to be the need for energy. And so I think it's a little bit different because if at some point you make it so efficient to where you're in a spot where, okay, you create something that someone can buy once and they never need to purchase it again. I'm like making it very simple, obviously. There's not really what's the incentive in a capitalistic society to do that?
What?
To have the everlasting gobstopper. Right, the thing that runs.
Yeah,
forever.
but you guys are assuming that just because you make a new iteration, it's going to be commercially successful or exponentially commercially successful. There's a whole mimetic, marketing, linguistic communication component that makes that successful. There's just so much that goes into it that to think that just because you create something a little better, that it's going to, become the big next new thing. It's just not true.
It's not because you make something a little bit better. It's because of the customers. It's some unmet need, and that gives you fuel to outperform. And the innovation, right? The point is that young companies are more dangerous than big companies. Young companies move quickly and break things effectively. And it doesn't even matter if they do because they're small, right? It's sort of like guerrilla business warfare. And we've discovered that guerrilla business is more effective than classic.
Well, look at Skype. Skype is shutting down. Microsoft is shutting it down and forcing everyone to Teams. So when you become a $2 trillion company like Google and you have Google Ventures, you just buy that startup, dissolve it, and incorporate that technology into your pre-existing platform. I mean, that's the whole monopoly busting, reason why I guess in America, we have this sentiment that we, have
Business
fair
is
play.
bad.
Yeah,
It's an old antitrust.
bigness is badness.
Bigness is badness.
I when I was much younger, I've always owned a lot of domain names, but when I was in high school, I registered this name called Gary Riegsecker because I read about him. He was the antitrust lawyer that took on Microsoft, and he made like hundreds of millions of dollars in the process. And so he sent me the most threatening letter I'd ever received in my life up until that point. And because I own GaryRiegsecker.com, and as a lawyer, you're like, you want to protect that. So he went bananas and said, if you don't release the name to me right now, I will basically squish you and kill you. I was like, okay, Jesus, you can have your name.
That was wild. That's true. Look, this is something that is coming up quite a bit right now, in like just with everything going on with AI. But what I'm talking about, it's an efficiency sort of problem, where what happens when something becomes so efficient, and I think it's called like Devon's paradox. Does the demand actually increase because something is so efficient, or does it become so efficient where the demand for it is almost becomes non-existent because of its efficiency?
I don't think that value is identified by justifying someone's continued existence. Right? Netflix does something like they fire themselves when they're no longer useful to the company, or they didn't well. Meaning, like, you got to realize that in the end, all of these business strategies, every story of every business, is some attempt, some story people are telling to convince people to give them money because they're helping them so much. And people make their cases. Amazon can prove that it's helping people. Facebook maybe can prove that it's helping people. Google can prove that it's helping. Apple can prove that it's helping people. The publicly traded companies are proving every day in dollar value that they are helping people.
Yeah, it's the data analytics. It's the back end. I used to sell digital advertising to car dealerships, and I would just say to them, "How much are you spending on your local newspaper every month?" I was like, "Well, show me the back end analytics of that." I'm like, "I can already show you what your cost per new user acquisition is. It's right here in the dashboard. If we just up it by 50%, you can expect an additional $6 per customer." Like, you can once you can prove somebody the math, or at least have the conversation, that hypnosis alone makes them lose confidence in the other executive who's selling that person that ad space.
Again, I want to be clear. They are making the case to prove that they are helping people. Like you said before, they could be lying. They could just invent numbers. They could be screwing people over and then only reporting the good stuff. There's things that they do. The whole point of the reporting regime is, like we were saying before, we love our records.
I also did real estate at one point, and this woman gave us a seminar, and she was like the top grossing real estate agent in Northwest Indiana. She was doing like close to $1 million a year in that. And all she did was dominate the local newspaper space. She didn't do any digital advertising, but she created a market basically in the local newspaper by dominating like one page. And she was essentially the listing broker for the whole fucking Northwest Indiana, because everybody was getting that newspaper to a certain extent. So if you can control the communication, you can control that marketplace or that industry.
I'm so pro-capitalism. Just like a good system. Really no objection.
Yeah, but and I know that at $40 trillion, it's not capitalism, it's fucking state capitalism. And even Google, if all these corporations were launched out of DARPA and In-Q-Tel, and they've gotten fucking hundreds of billions of dollars in government contracts, like this is not capitalism. This is crony capitalism, and everybody knows it. And it's really just how much can you get out of it until the spigot turns off. And now that the spigot is turning off, and Trump is essentially cutting all spending. I mean, even all purchase cards. Do you see the whole news article about the purchase cards in the U.S. government?
First shuts off. This is America. He shuts off the spigot for some, and he turns it on for others.
Right.
Right. That was the thing. Like Teddy Roosevelt was known as the trust buster. That he beat down all these trusts. And if you look at the trusts that he targeted, he left some of the trusts intact. He busted some, but left others alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then after he was replaced, that guy went after the other ones. You see, it is a bunch of sharks devouring each other, but they're doing it in performance of our improvement of life. They're just killing each other for our amusement. It's like the gladiator ring, except we get stuff out of it.
Well, when Carnegie died, you know what was left from his fortune? I mean, it went into like a national library building project. I think that's considered like one of the greatest nonprofit activities from an estate of all time. Considered, to be a very benevolent act of charity. Like the Romans, if you were a very powerful Roman senator or statesman, you would build public works in Rome, for the constituency, for the people, to reward them with, the massive profit. But where in America today, other than Donald Trump building a fucking ice skating rink in Manhattan, do you see any billionaires doing like huge civic endowments? I know they're out there, like Ken Griffin. He did the Field Museum here in Chicago, and I'm sure there's other huge donations. But where is this Bill Gates and Warren Buffett pledge to essentially spend their, $400 billion?
I understand that their pledge is to donate at least half of their net worth before or upon their death.
You said at least half?
Yeah, they at least half. Like that's the billionaire pledge that I think Gates got Buffett and
fucking Warren could be days away. He's like 90 something now.
I guess. Do you know how much he just paid in taxes? Like he supported the American government so much.
How much was it?
It was like $24 billion personally. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's what I don't get about the people that are like, they need to pay their fair share. Dude, the wealthy are the ones that literally support.
Well, he's famous for saying that his secretary pays a higher percentage of income tax than he does.
Yeah. I mean, she has different types of assets.
What did he do? Like, what was so different about it? Was he just obviously very intelligent dude, but like extremely disciplined?
No. I mean, like he had good areas. I believe insurance and trailer parks. And he understood the field better than most. Like insurance, not a lot of people really understand like the ins and outs of insurance when it's good. And trailer parks is a specific type. So he had like a bit of a niche. He worked on it slowly and patiently the same way for 50 years and became better than anyone that's ever looked at it.
He essentially was doing a podcast too with that Charlie Munger. Like every year they would have their, Berkshire Hathaway a corporate board meeting, and it's essentially a podcast, and all kinds of wealthy executives, a lot of financial advisors, entrepreneurs, self-help people, they all flocked to the Warren Buffett annual, meeting event because it was essentially like it was like 3 hours of wisdom from supposedly the smartest people in the world. So they used that speaking engagement to further promote their brand and develop connections.
So also think about it cynically. A, yes, he is wise, he is capable. B, doesn't really matter if he's wise and capable if everyone in the world is listening to him because of his billions of dollars. So no matter what, you want to hear what he has to say.
But it wasn't just him. It was that guy Charlie Unger. Like if you've ever actually listened to their conversations, you realize that his partner carried half that load. Like his partner may have even been a little smarter than Warren, just like a little bit. But that partnership, I think is also what really created that success for them, because when you have a perfect partnership, it really is 1 + 1 = 3.
Business is a team sport. I don't agree with anyone that says they do it alone. They're lying.
It's more fun when you have a partner who's enjoying it and you're both crushing it. Like, I've worked for successful people who are partners, and you're like, damn, these guys, like, it's a friendship. But it's fun. Like I said, do you have a paralegal or an assistant that does work for you, like, full time?
Not exactly. I mean, I work at a firm, so I have a team.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that do my bidding as I send them emails. But not like,
Yeah, one-on-one.
they're more like paralegals for the clients.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, like, they're the points of representative for different tasks that I need, mostly with client interactions, so that I can focus on the lawyers.
What are your most difficult, challenging tasks that you have to accomplish, monthly or biannually or something?
It's not difficult. None of it is difficult. It's just time intensive. It's work that needs to get done. A lot of people are complaining about a lot of different bits of money for different reasons, and I have to talk to all of them.
So what's the friction then? Like, why can't you? How do you develop a deeper flow state in your business?
Deeper flow state. I don't know what you mean. To me, I like a job where there's always something to be done. In this case, because I have so many files and they are not very complicated legal issues, I constantly have something to do. That motivates me because I get a little dopamine hit every time I do something.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I like joke and I go like, I hate you, email, die, gone, away. It's all just play.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Well, if you were, I was gonna ask, if your employer was like, McSad, how do we expand the business? Tell us what we should do. Like, what would you tell your, the owners of your business? Or I don't know if you're a partner, but if you,
Another area law, but I mean, right now we're in a specific field. It's pretty good. We could branch out into other areas, but it would require different types of marketing. I don't like focusing on the business aspect. I like focusing on the law.
But what about software as a service for law firms? I see so many like AI legal bullshit.
I mean, I have a file manager, so that's pretty similar.
What about securities law? Meaning, like, when an investor loses over $100,000, call this firm, call Johnson & Johnson. If you lost over $100,000 in Intel, whenever a stock plummets, you always see these law firms advertising for investor losses, and they're going to making. Yeah.
I used to draft those press releases.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to me like a big business because
what's the where's the damages if you just invest?
Because, like, let's say it's arbitration. You go to it's against the broker dealers. So if you have an account with J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, etc., and you lost a substantial amount, you can go into arbitration with that broker dealer, and if you get half of it back or a quarter of it back, you're going to have to kick up 60% to the lawyer, but at least you're going to get 10% back, 20% back of whatever you lost.
You get a third. Not
Yeah,
60.
Third. Okay. I'm just saying, I've traded stocks for 20 years, and I have seen those advertisements from these law firms in the Yahoo Finance news feed forever.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
just like, what a business.
They send out as soon as there's a dip of a sizable enough thing. Anyone that calls, they wrangle together and then negotiate it, and it's mostly like just a shakedown.
Yeah, I had to right out of college. I was working at Smith Barney City Group, and we moved offices from the Sears Tower to this building on the South Street, and I had to move all the boxes with fucking hundreds of filing cabinets. So I was filling all these boxes, sending them off to what is that company called? Iron Mountain, and literally sent hundreds of boxes off. Didn't even really do an inventory. Just fucking anyways, the point is, all that paperwork was lawsuits, arbitration. It wasn't research. It wasn't notes on the clients. It was all lawfare paperwork. And I was like, holy shit, this place operates off of.
What are you talking about?
I'm saying that at Smith Barney, all of the paperwork and all of the filing cabinets, it was all arbitration from investor losses. Like, that's all it was. There was no there was no client files. There was nothing. It was all just fucking lawsuits from clients that, arbitrated with the broker dealer after fucking losing their asses in their portfolio.
Well, it is a lot of paperwork.
I mean, that's the kind of paperwork you need to keep around, but I'm just saying that it's not like these brokers are doing research.
You don't need that stuff. That's why they threw it in file cabinets.
Yeah. It just went to some fucking black hole. That Iron Mountain makes a lot of money because they have so much stuff in storage that so many of these corporations have just forgotten about and could give two fucks about, and they just keep paying the monthly storage fees on it. I wonder what that stock is doing, but I'm not buying and selling stocks anymore.
I think it's gonna be interesting with the whole with AI and the legal system. Like I'm assuming I don't know shit about the legal system, but I'm guessing like a lot of the like Lerner and Rowe, like these, it might be more local where I am, but like the accident, get hurt in an accident, etc. I'm assuming they just like outsource all of the labor, for lack of better terms, of all these claims that come in, and that might be like I don't know exactly what you do, except but I'm guessing like it's something a firm like that is going to probably be much more hesitant to adopt something like AI, just because of it's not. I don't think you guys are just trying to increase volume. Volume is all that matters. But with these other I don't you said, do you know any of these lawyers that are like on billboards? Like, do you personally know like anyone that? What kind of people are these guys? Are they like just total? What are they? It's a very odd thing to see.
Well, you get a lot of different types in the lawyer community. Some of those guys are like hucksters, just like trying to do sales. Other times they're good lawyers and like they're just following good marketing advice. Just like, put your face out there, because like lawyer ads all look a certain way. They want a name, they want to see you in a suit, they want an impression that you fight or defend really well,
Yeah.
So sometimes you have like genuine good lawyers that are just playing dress up. A lot of law is performative. It's a theater sport.
I took this business when I did undergrad. I took this business law course, and the guy who taught the course made it big in like tobacco litigation in South Carolina. Or who was that guy recently? He was like a lawyer in Charleston who killed his wife and like killed his girlfriend or something. Like he has orange hair.
With like the kid, right?
Yeah.
Isn't his kid?
Yeah, very crazy story.
The lawyer was like baron of this land. Like he just controlled whatever the hell happened. He had like a plot of land they could like fly on and just like, and like his kid was like a spoiled brat and like murdered somebody on the property or something. It's a crazy story.
Yeah, it's just kind of well. I saw something. I was also at the gym. Saw this thing on Dateline where this very successful doctor on the East Coast in New York or whatever murdered his wife with cyanide because she wanted to divorce him. And it's just
Yeah.
amazing how you can be like a super successful person. You could have done 20,000 heart surgeries. Then, in a fit of rage and anger, you lose your shit and you decide to murder your spouse. It's like, was there like an ethical, moral thing you just didn't pick up like 20 years ago? Or was it like something new? You know, I mean, very
I think
crazy.
I think there's a reason that they have all doctors swear the Hippocratic Oath, because I think to some degree it's a dehumanizing profession. Like the majesty and the marvel of the human is dissected literally into its component parts for the sake of health. And I think that to some degree it disassociates them from humans a little bit. I've heard things of that, of like doctors that like just don't care about people anymore.
Well, they say nurses have killed more people in human history than anybody else.
Yeah, well, that's because that's what they're doing.
I don't mean
Right.
I mean intentionally murdering their patients because they're angry, they're depressed, they're obsessed.
Yeah,
And so they
yeah,
want to
yeah.
kill
I
the
mean,
fucking
very
patient,
vivid,
which is
yeah,
causing them a
definitely.
negative dopamine.
Yeah, do you know who is the biggest abuser of drugs by profession?
Pharmacists.
Doctors.
Nope. Anesthetic nurses.
Like anesthesiologists?
Wow, yeah, I believe
They're
that.
anesthetics. They know all of the good drugs, the really good stuff. They know all of that. They have access to it. They know the procedures for disposing of them and how to grab them rather than dispose of them. So yeah, it's like candy. Like they're holding it in their hand. It's like, hey, throw that away or have fun tonight.
I lived in Hermosa Beach and I'm like on the boardwalk. I meet this cute woman and I'm like, "Oh, what do you do?" She's like, "Well, I've had to take a break. I'm a nurse anesthesiologist. I had to take a break because I got charged with just, distributing narcotics and I had to go to jail. I had to do therapy and so now I'm just
Oh
like
my
picking
god.
my life back up to." I'm like, "You wait a minute. You were dealing your like medicine that from work and stuff?" And she's like, "Yeah,
Sounds
I
like
got
an
I got caught."
involuntary break.
Yeah, she was a very nice person, like very nice woman, and I was kind of surprised. I was like, "Damn!" Like I can't believe you had to go through all this, but I get
Yeah,
it.
and it wouldn't be the pharmacists, it would be the pharmacy technicians. Again, look for the cheap hired hands working with the expensive desirable drugs.
Yeah, I mean, look at Michael Jackson. It's kind of interesting because if you use propofol, um, and you look at like psychedelic experiences and disassociated states, or ego death and shit like that. If you want a real ego death, I mean, you literally like do the anesthesiology, cocktail, and you're literally like dead. Like when you like I've had a tooth removed, and like when you're unconscious, like you really it's like being asleep. So I'm saying there's like you could possibly like play with those drugs and experiment with them to get into like a state of mind which is not asleep. It's like lucid dreaming or something.
This sounds like date rape.
Like,
I mean, I'm just thinking of like what areas are people just completely vulnerable that they wouldn't even necessarily know if something happened while they were out. What's that movie? Horrible Bosses. Remember? Jennifer Aniston. Anyways, what was I gonna? I was gonna say something. Oh, Robin Williams. I remember you made. I was too young for Michael Jackson. Well, that's kind of a paradox. What I meant was I was I wasn't like aware of like the whole situation and whatnot, but I remember Robin Williams doing a bit where he's like, the guy was taking propofol to go to sleep. That's like getting chemotherapy, so you don't have to get your hair cut. Oh god.
right, what was that joke? What's the difference between McDonald's and Neverland Ranch?
What?
One's full of 27-year-olds, the other's full of 27-year-olds.
Yeah, that sounds like a Muslim one. But you guys know Sig on here. He PTR'd. I guess his family was like big in the music music industry. But he PTO'd a photo of his mom from like the 70s or 80s with Michael Jackson when they were still, like, I guess it was during his last tour. And bro, I didn't even recognize him. Didn't even look like him. Forget that he was black, like black. And not, you know. So I don't know what he was. He's a very.
Yeah, he looked really weird by the end.
And he just like talked weird. Everything about him was very creepy.
Hi. Had a problem with how he talks. It's just expressing his music, man.
When he held up that baby and it had like the veil over its head and he was screaming while the baby was screaming, I was like, holy shit. Yeah, he took that baby and dangled it over a fucking balcony in like Italy or something.
He Rafiki'd it.
You're right, that's what he was doing.
I mean, maybe had he dropped him, he would have wrote another amazing song like Eric Clapton, Tears in Heaven. Nice. This is actually a very sad story.
To the light.
Rikishi, was he the fat wrestler guy that used to just basically...
What did you think it ever be done? The sun.
Yo, I saw the second one for like the first time, and Lion King was one of the few cartoons that I watched when I was a child. Very deprived. I loved that movie. The second one was horrible, dude. Horrible.
Second one, you mean?
The like where it's the kid grown up, and he's like basically a beta.
The made-for-Disney direct-to-video, right? They've had a few Lion Kings. They just had a prequel, I think, called Mufasa. They had the live-action CGI remake.
So I'm talking about the sequel, like where the
I'm saying the sequel was direct-to-video. It's not like an official sequel.
Really?
Yes. It's like the sequel to Aladdin.
I really didn't watch Disney movies at all.
Okay.
But hold on, I don't trust you here. You might be wrong, but you might be right. Let me see.
Direct to video.
That means it's not official though. Like
it means there was no distribution on it. It didn't play in theaters. Like you can consider it as canon or not. It's
Was it at all have to do with the timing of when it came out in COVID, or nothing to do with that? It was just a total.
It came out during COVID.
Let's see.
It came out like
There's a Lion King 2 that came out in 1998.
That's what I'm telling you. What? And I think there was a third, or 2.5 maybe, was what they called it. Look it up. This is the
What? And that. Oh my God. Sandy's Pride.
Yeah.
Did I watch a 20-year-old movie thinking it was a new one?
Yes, probably.
No.
Then there's also they also had a series off of like a leopard guy, I think. And they had like magic team powers, like it was a leopard and a lion, and like they had a bird helping. You know, cartoons.
Oh my God, I think I did watch the 1998 one. No, it can't be because it was too there was too much bullshit.
No,
No way.
can't be. That's impossible.
No.
It's impossible.
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
No!
It's the secret timeline.
When I saw they re-released the Star Wars movies, I went with my dad, and there's a scene where Emperor Palpatine says, "There is a disturbance in the Force," and Darth Vader says, "I know, I have felt him." And I started laughing. I was like, "It's so gay," and everybody in the theater started laughing.
That was funny. Earlier when we were talking about nuclear power and you were saying that we could blow up the whole planet, that reminded me, I think K-19 The Widowmaker, which I think was the remake with Harrison Ford, at the beginning, they have like this line, which by the way, hated that movie. Fell asleep. Don't watch it. Forget it. At the beginning, they said at the height of the Cold War, the Soviet Union had stockpiled enough nuclear armaments to blow up the entirety of planet Earth 2 times over. Then another line pops up. America could do it 10 times over. And I just thought that was the funniest, dumbest thing, right? I was like, what? Why would you need more than 2? What's the 10 for?
Yeah, that's a good one. I wasn't talking about nuclear. You were.
No. Well, you brought it up first. And you were the one that said we could blow up everyone, right? You could kill everyone.
Right, but I wasn't referring to. I wasn't referring to like nuclear though.
Then I guess I'm just associated it.
I never got into Star Wars, and I love space and like physics, but Star Wars, Star Trek, that shit was just too gay. I don't know what to say.
I hear you.
It was too sci-fi.
Are you more that kind of guy?
No.
Because most would consider it like less sci-fi, more magical.
Yeah.
It leans on like knighthood, chivalry, warfare.
Neither of those. Very. I still don't get when people are so obsessed by that.
I'm obsessed with
Star Wars, yeah, like the art.
Well, there's. You should talk to Edmund. Like, Star Wars is effective because it's tremendously good hypnosis. Like, he put a lot of study into how to do that. And other people have, like, tried. And so it's not just like, oh, it's so easy, just read the same books. But, like, he's an artist, and he really captured some romantic, futuristic notion of chivalry. Right? It's fraud. Because that's sort of the fear of the modern. The fear of the modern was like set up by the romantics that came right after and said, you're throwing off all of our amazing heritage of like valor, courage, because like you figured out economics or something, and like you're destroying humanity. That's like what the romantics argued. So the enlightened, the moderns, they are worried about that. Star Wars is a solution to that problem. The future will be chivalric when it is needed. Which is funny because they also put it in the ancient past. Cleverly constructed movie. I love watching
people. It's kind of interesting because I think it ties into what
in a bottle that was Star Wars. I see them try it. Like, what was that? Jupiter Ascending, Dune. They're all trying, and Star Wars itself was like ripping off Dune. Dune was the book, and that like failed as a movie project. Star Wars stole its thunder.
Yeah, I watched Dune. I had never heard of Dune until like 6 months ago. I watched it. It was alright. But yeah, I mean, look, I think most people when they're watching movies, I don't think they're seeing it for like what it is that you're saying. And I think you're right in saying it's like this very well constructed thing. But this goes kind of into the idea of like, how much are people actually choosing to like strive for something, or are they just being like programmed in a way? And in this case, to like I don't think there's anything wrong with programming people.
It's not as simple as like programming them, right? The hypnosis is effective because it is actually communicating, right? He doesn't really control the art that he produces if he wants it to be commercially viable. He has to anticipate what people will want, and then they will want whatever they want. Like, he's only guessing when he produces his final piece. That's why it's an art. And what people find in it, that's more on them than on him. He doesn't really control that. The people do. Which, by the way, in the case of Star Wars, that's why he put in so many different layers. He had samurai in there. He had magic in there. He had religion in there. He had warfare. He had revolution. He had brigand. a heart of gold. Like he has that turn from Han Solo from a criminal into a moral man. You've got the princess, so you have arcane styles of governance and multiple planets. He was very wise in the elements that he included, and also like the fascist imperial leaders with like straight homages to Nazi Germany and like making it all white. That was also beautiful. Like he was smart. Like if you look at his other stuff, like THK, you can see he had big, bold design ideas. But THK is dog shit. Nobody likes it. It's a boring movie. It's not Star Wars. But if you watch it, you can see that he has an aesthetic choice, and the people enjoyed the way he did it in Star Wars. What was it, like TK-43? Was that the name? Or THX-483? I think something like that. He had a dystopian future story. But
It's interesting to hear you and Diego talk about movies. The way you guys view movies, it goes way over my head when I'm watching these movies. So I'm for it.
yeah, I can tell that Diego has watched too many movies as I have. Although, to be fair, I can also see that he has bought probably significantly more than I have. Like, I definitely wasted my time watching too many movies. Pretty confident he has wasted more time watching more movies.
Yeah, but what I noticed with both of you guys is that, like, you both kind of, or maybe I'm just the one that's lacking, but, like, you both sort of really have a grasp on, and you obviously are a lawyer, with how important it is to, like, tell a story.
Yes.
That shit went over my head. But it is interesting.
Yeah, I've always liked movies.
Who's the best producer? Are you like a Kubrick guy, or what's the other ones?
Well, Kubrick's the director.
Okay, yeah, director. Yeah, I don't know anything about this stuff, but who's the greatest of all time in your opinion?
I mean, different directors do different things. They all have their own voices. I don't like comparing them, but I do have some like favorites. There's a few that I like a lot, like Tarantino. I'm a huge fan of Tarantino. I also like the Coen brothers. I think everything they make is amazing. I also like Rian Johnson. He's fun. I like a lot of different directors. They have different sensibilities. They pull out different things in film. Right? Like also Spielberg.
The Johnsons.
Like Spielberg is an excellent director, but like the movies he makes are not in my top 10. Like they're not things that I love. I get what he's doing. He's excellent at it. Same thing with like James Cameron. James Cameron, he did make some of like up there. Like I can see his mastery when it's on full performance. But I also know that he's just an amazing director. He knows practically how to do more on set than literally everyone.
I remember something about still. And he started like trying to make movies when he was like very, very young, cutting up and piecing together like old like World War II footage and whatnot to fill a narrative. It's pretty well.
Breaking up. 18.
Yeah, I'm grilling a steak.
Oh, did I already? You're going stick in the car?
18.
Wow. Oh, so this is going on already? Yes. Okay, I should update that.
So that Cohen's thing that you mentioned earlier, is that like literally Cohen's, or is that just like a last name that they happen to have? I've never heard of this.
Not everyone with a last name Cohen is a Cohen because
right.
but I am a Cohen. Yes.
Kohen? Am I mispronouncing it?
Yeah, in Hebrew it's Kohen.
So what would happen if you did want to marry someone who wasn't in that sort of like your whole?
I wouldn't want that. Actually, there was a girl. To be fair, this was after I was already married, so I really was not interested at all. But there was a woman I met at work, still very close friends with her. I think she's like got a bit of an Italian background, but either way, she and I just like gelled. It was insane. Like we were just like rat-a-tat, loving everything each of us was saying. It was a weird rapport that happened instantly. Like we only worked together for like a few months. We're still kind of close. We catch up every once in a while. She just had a kid. That's like an example. Like I found someone that would be a prospect, but I'm not interested.
They're not chosen.
No, I don't want to. Think of it this way. If I decide to marry a non-Jewish woman or someone that like I'm not allowed to under Jewish law, then I'm taking away the option from my kids. I'm not letting them decide if they want to be Kohanim. I'm just taking them out. I'm saying like, all right, you're just not going to be a priest. And I feel like that's disrespectful to my ancestors, right?
100%.
If they preserved it to the point where I am actually a Kohen, it's kind of rude to just like throw it up because I saw a girl I wanted, you know?
Yeah, I get that.
So I never, like I thought about it a bit when I was a kid, like what would I do? How do I, like maybe throw the whole thing away? I was never antagonistic against it, but it just seems like a reasonable restriction. Like, okay, I see plenty of Jewish girls rule. Doesn't seem that hard to find them.
Yeah. Is that like what percentage of Jews are Kohens? Like a very super small?
I don't know if they have numbers on that. Let's see. What percentage of Jews alive today are Kohen? According to current estimates, approximately 4% of Jews alive today are considered Kohanim. And then among the Levites, it's approximately 8%. So I am within a 4% of a 0.15% of the global population of Jews. I've never tested for the Y chromosomal RNA DNA, but I probably have it.
That's pretty rare.
You know, it doesn't really matter. Unless everyone wants to get that temple started. You tell me when they get the temple, I will report.
Like, I've heard this name before.
Cohen? Yeah, it's popular. Did I get that one yet? I don't think so. Oh, here it is.
Remember,
Breaking up again.
and I was noticing like the more eye to eye with like the Jewish short interpretation on certain things, and that's when I was like, no, I'm not. I didn't know that. Rules no intervention.
I'm not exactly understanding you. You went through the matrix and then it all kind of spat out altogether.
It doesn't matter. No, I was saying I didn't know that like a lot of the Jewish perspective kind of leans towards not really having the intervention in the same way that the Christians sort of see God intervening. Like intervening. Remember this morning we were talking about like, well, when calling something a miracle versus just yeah,
I do think that the essence of the idea of a miracle is some kind of event that occurred in history, which a religion utilizes to make a point about reality. That's mostly what it is. And I should say a deviation from the normal existence. When something deviant happens, religious organizations identify it if it's for good, or usually no matter what, they call it a miracle. And then they will call it a blessing or a curse depending upon the effect it has. Right? Like plagues. Plagues are types of miracles.
Really?
Yeah, have you ever heard of the Exodus?
No.
Okay, well, the Jews left Egypt one time, and there were 10 plagues that besieged Egypt. Rather than fighting any army or political motivation, the forces of nature turned on Egypt.
And these 10 were very much consecutively, in a short span?
Yeah, well, they might have led one to the other. So first, the river turns to blood, which could have been just an algae outgrowth or a bunch of dead animals, but either way, there's a bunch of blood in there and no one. Polluted water. The polluted water, unsurprisingly, results in a lot of the sea life leaving the water and plaguing the city, resulting in an infestation of frog. The frogs then died, resulting in lice growing on their corpses. The lice then lead to disease, and animals start to die. You see, one thing leads to another and another and another. And the way the Jews interpreted all of these natural disasters that were happening as Moses said they would as part of his negotiation techniques with Pharaoh, they said that Moses was using God as a bargain. He was telling Pharaoh, let us go or else, and each one of these disasters would happen right after he warned him. That's the story anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty wild, sure.
I mean, they did get out of there. They were in Egypt. They knew Egypt. They knew how to live in the desert long enough, and they left. I don't know why. The Egyptians don't lend any reason why their slaves suddenly left. All we have is the narrative of the descendants of those slaves who explain what they say happened. That's all we got.
How wild.
And if you think about it, think about the slave narratives of America. Do you think that the masters want that narrative out? Do you think anyone wants praise bestowed upon the slave population while slavery is still being practiced? The existence of Israel was like a threat to the existence of slavery.
That's I don't know. It's sometimes when I hear stuff about you make the comments about we.
Oh, come on.
Oh, Edmund, I guess I cloned your voice today.
That's racist. Cloning is interesting too. You're going to have people developing armies. Robots are more destructive, though. Do more with less.
just the idea of like the
Breaking up again. Done.
And they, in theory, clone a human that like doesn't have to go through the developmental phase. Like they don't have to wait like 30 years from.
No, that's just sci-fi nonsense people make up. Like, if we could do that, wouldn't we just like do that to kids if we wanted? Like,
I mean, well then yeah, then cloning seems inherently like a way to source new used parts.
yes, that could. They have that movie, The Island, where clones are just like hanging out in what they believe is like a utopian society. Really, they're just being cared for so that their organs are ready for harvesting when their host subject needs it. One good bit about that was that they had like a big black guy there, and he was there for like 2 weeks. And then they said, "Oh, congratulations, you won the lottery, right?" Because they're gonna kill him and take his organs. And I was like, "Why would that happen? That he would be there for only 2 weeks?" They said, "Because he's a professional athlete, so he needs organs more regularly." Isn't that hilarious? I like that because that's like thinking through the actual economics of the thing.
No, I don't know. Yeah, well, I was going to say something racist, but yeah.
Yeah,
There's
that part was racist. Really, the one guy you kill early on to show we mean business is a big black guy.
Well, I was leaning more along the lines of like, why would you even clone one? Just kidding. Oh god, that's terrible.
Yes.
But I'm not sure.
This is the why.
Have you seen a Bruce Willis movie? It's called Surrogates.
Yes, a long time ago.
Yeah, I saw that for the first time like a year and a half. That was an interesting sort of concept.
Yeah, every once in a while the sci-fis have like some nice commentary. Usually, what's interesting is it's hard to get good commentary from sci-fi films. Because it's just like not, if it's trying to build up a whole new idea, it's just like not enough time to play with it. It's just not a good medium. That's why sci-fi was written in like novels. You can do short stories, I guess, but that'd be more like a short film. There's not like a good, it's hard to get good sci-fi movies.
Is there an element where they're like somewhat trying to maybe like be relevant or on the right path, like what things might be like in 100 years?
No, I just think it's the wrong medium. Like, look at Tarantino. Never did sci-fi. Never. He did like samurai movies. He included some magic in his movies more than sci-fi. And I think it's because it doesn't work for movies. Yeah, and he likes sci-fi. He's a big Trek nerd. He was thinking of doing Star Trek for like his last films. But I just think I don't think sci-fi really works in cinema.
Well, then why does magic work? Because they're like, I know they're very different, but they're kind of like, in some sense, like sort of similar. Magic.
Fair question. Why does magic work better than sci-fi? I guess because sci-fi and magic are genres that are designed to exist behind the story. The story's not supposed to be about the technology or the magical power as much as what the characters are doing because there's magic or technology. So I'd say magic is easier for the mind to accept and roll with and understand the mechanisms of than sci-fi, which naturally draws in the mind to figure out how they're doing this, that, and the other. So I'd say that like the backdrop is like thematically cluttered for a sci-fi movie, and it's thematically clean for a magic movie. Although, to be fair, magic does not work that much in movies. They don't use it too much. They use more like Deus Ex Machina. Like, that's their magic. Like, this just happens because the story demands it will, you know?
Yeah. Well, there's like an overemphasis. I'm not very well versed in movies, but like the magic movies I can think of is it's like broomsticks, like little wooden, like something that is so. I guess I imagine that's probably intentional, like you're saying. It's more about the characters and how they use magic than the magic itself.
Yeah, I find magic to be narratively usually pretty weak. I feel like it's kind of like being a subjectivist. It's ill-defined until I want it defined. So it's like worse than a Deus Ex Machina. Like a Deus Ex Machina, I feel like, okay, there's some kind of a force that just makes a hurricane when we want it, you know? And sometimes it's useful and sometimes it's not in the story. But like magic is like, oh, guess what? I got this power. Why didn't you use that the first time? Yeah, it always breaks the story, right? Like in Harry Potter, right? What do they have? They have time travel. They have time travel in Harry Potter. Do they use this to destroy Voldemort? No. Do they use this to stop him from coming back from the dead? Right? A violation of their sacred magic laws. He comes back from the dead. They could return to that exact moment and just like kick over the pot. Like the guy was there alone in a graveyard with 2 kids. It was easy to kill him. But instead, they don't.
Well, yeah, vice versa with Voldemort, right? Like, he somehow couldn't kill Harry Potter, and then, well, why not just go back and finish the job?
No, the reason they fixed that narratively within the story. The reason Voldemort couldn't kill Harry Potter was because he had an enchantment on him. His mother died protecting him, which was an ancient form of magic of self-sacrifice because we're all Christians. And as a result, Voldemort couldn't. No, seriously, because they're fucking Brits, and that's how they think. It's the same thing with C.S. Lewis, right? Did you ever see, like, what happens to Aslan? Aslan sacrifices himself. He shows up to the witch, and she shaves his head and kills him on a rock. He rises the next day because he says she didn't know that there's an older rule that if you die for a noble cause, you always come back. And I'm like, fuck you, Aslan.
No, I don't even know what that movie is, but that is kind of funny, actually.
It's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
It's also probably a very sensitive thing, seeing how it sort of is our God does that thing. But
Okay, so C.S. Lewis, he was contemporaries with Tolkien, and Tolkien wanted to try to give fantasy voice to the indigenous ancestors of England, right? So he wanted orcs, he wanted elves, he wanted hobbits, and he wanted to associate them to different like versions he had of ancient peoples of England, right? And that was like his move. He like saw it that way. C.S. Lewis is more religious, and he felt that his narrative world, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, should inspire people to believe in Jesus, basically. So The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the fuzzy, valiant lion at the center of the story dies and resurrects to move the plot along.
I did not think. I've seen The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or whatever like that's called. I had no idea that there's some sort of Christianity later.
Oh yeah, dude, he like shows up to like a giant stone pillar or something to the witch, and he like surrenders. She shaves him, kills him, he's dead, and then the next day rises up. Which, like, listen, to a Christian, I'm sure it's like, oh my God, I knew that was gonna happen. For me, I'm like, fuck you, he was dead. Like, if you don't want him dead, don't say he died. Say that, like, she's trapped him or cut off his tail. I don't care. If he's dead, he's dead. You don't kill him just to unkill him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is there more to it than that? Like, like being tied to the Christian thing? Because it's, you don't think,
Because he has this thing where Aslan returns, right? He exists in their hearts, and he's always the king that will return. Like, you just gotta look through that book.
Yeah, it's very vague to me. I don't remember. Oh.
But he mostly like builds up a fantasy world where people can act with like totemic representations of different Christian concepts he was playing with. That's why it's very popular amongst Christians.
So you guys don't control all of Hollywood, I guess. Just
No.
most of it.
I mean, it's more like there were a lot of Jews in vaudeville, and there was entrepreneurial interest and new technologies. Like, the history of cinema is entrepreneurial. Like, if you ever see that movie, what was it, Babylon, I think, they showed, like, what the early movie sets were like, and it's just like a bunch of yokels in the desert focusing on, like, some little set that they put together, right? They know how to build a set and put on a play. They're all vaudeville. And they just took pictures. Took pictures and recorded. That's it. It's just endless photos. Day in and day out until the sun sets. And they were partying.
You think they could have like foreseen the level of like cultural impact that ultimately is not in their time? Yeah.
Everyone knew that the camera was amazing. The camera itself had already been worked on for a while. When they figured out motion picture technology and they saw the effect it had on people, they knew it was amazing. Like, no one had a doubt about that. That's why they like ran away from Edison to go steal his cameras.
You're basically talking like a 4-year-old when it comes to anything historically, but
yeah.
Yeah.
People blame America for not being historically conscious. I think it's more a symptom of the
no, for me, it's just never interested. History has just never been. It's never interested me. But yeah, our schooling system does suck. But it has nothing to do with why.
No,
very little.
I'm saying that it's not the schooling system. I think that the modern man, like the modern sensibility, discounts the value of history because we did so many resets, and we're in one era of a reset. We did like this modern world thing, right?
Might say that there is
a lot of that is on us disavowing the mistakes and foolishness of the past because we're more scientific and enlightened now. So we discount history. But if you really get down to it, like, you should. There's no replacement for the understanding of history. No amount of knowledge of human genetics or psychology or innate concepts that will always be true will beat out the facts of what actually happened. And you can only know what happened. So it's upsetting that they don't value history. It's one of the most important fields to study.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. Geo is kind of I've become more aware of, like, all the history always repeats itself, but like I don't know what that, but it seems that like humans tend to like repeat there's a certain cycles that
we live in a well-ordered universe, and one of the things in this well-ordered universe is a well-ordered, predictable human. We know roughly how they act.
Yeah. Yeah, which is kind of wild because it's
we have
there's so many things that you see today that you probably couldn't help but like maybe conclude that it's some aspect or some element of this must be intentional. The fact that people are making uproars about problems or things that like have kind of basically already been solved, or is it like this is part of a cycle that is going to happen again and again and again. It's not something new. It's look back to find the answer to see where things evolve to.
Well, you got to be careful, right? Especially with the study of history. Study of history can give you tremendous egotism, belief that you understand exactly what's going on. And what's always important in any field of study is to maintain one's humility. Like, and Geo does. Geo is very. He has a very specific goal. He mostly wants America to fall, Egypt to rise, or something.
He's a monarchist.
Yeah, he's a bit of a guy. But like, that's what he can do with history. That's why it's such an important area. You can't argue with the facts. Like, if his facts are good, they are. And you can craft so many arguments with the facts of history at your disposal, to the point where people are very dangerous with a true knowledge of history. Putin is a far more effective leader than the American presidents that we have had, because he is one guy that has been living through all of Russian history. His knowledge of Russian history from a Russian perspective is far superior to the knowledge of American history of any president we have had in that office. In how many terms? God. Probably since Nixon. Nixon was smart.
You know, since the 4-year thing, to me, it just seems like maybe the idea behind it, it's just to create basically no ability to get anything done, because in theory that would be like not so bad actually.
The American system is designed to get nothing done, unless the people's voice is clear. So all of that, like interference and bureaucracy, and you can't do this, that guy's approval, and that guy was voted for from this district, all of that is meant to tie a cohesive national interest. A New Yorker shouldn't necessarily care what a New Mexican thinks about his policies, but America forces us to.
No.
And as a result, it aligns our interests over time. We become more national, less statist. Because New York is stronger when they are concerned about New Mexico. When New York is only concerned about itself, it's weakened. The Federation is stronger.
Yeah, but I mean, how does that work? Like, how does that work in a situation where you have certain areas that are they're completely opposed to each other, but like they've also been ran by the left in that respected area and by the right in that respected area, so they just inherently don't agree. How does that like round people to be more national?
At their core, reptilian brains, they all agree. They want power, and they want people to let them do what they know is best. They disagree as to what is best. And the only reason they disagree is because the American bureaucracy has skillfully divided them into two different camps.
Okay, but what I'm
They're just frontmen.
But in the states regions, they're not. The two camps aren't really an issue for the most part. Like New York or California, right? It's like they're gonna be red and blue respectively, or like any state that had. I mean, for the most part, what do they call it? The swing states, the ones that are.
New York is blue.
Yeah. So like, how much infighting is really gonna like? They're not being threatened by the other party in any way whatsoever in New York, other than at like a national level, right? Like, which is all kind of bullshit.
No. The Republican Party in New York has ways of undermining the Dems. It's just the Dems control cities. That's where they're most concentrated. And New York City is the most powerful city the world has ever seen. Just like a fact, you know.
Yeah.
When the Brits invaded America and occupied it, they occupied New York City.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Like what year? Talking like the 1700s?
Yeah.
Okay. So how city-like was it actually, though? Like very little.
It was not what it is today. Not as close.
Well, no, obviously.
Islands. They had like, they had industry. They had different cottages. There's some old maps of what the early settlements looked like. Very good maps. Got like streets names.
Right, I have to remind myself that people were here before 1776.
Yeah. 1776 was when we had enough of the king.
Yeah. No, I'm one of those stupid Americans like that. I just very ignorant of history, and I'm like, I just associate everything around that time. There was nothing before
the
then.
Americans of being ignorant of history and like not being familiar with geography and the world outside. But if you ask the people around the world, they don't know history at all. They know it less.
Well,
listen, I think in the free speech internet space of America, Americans educate themselves a lot. I wouldn't say that they have like a great understanding of history. They make a ton of mistakes, but like the people abroad, they know their history. They know jack about anyone else's history. And the truth is, they don't always know their own history. I've talked to them about it, and they're just like, "What? This happened? When? How?"
Why are you so certain that you have the correct version of their history? Internet?
Yeah, internet. I know how to trust information that comes to me. Well, one of the things to learn, you have to know between first-hand knowledge and second-hand knowledge, and when to trust second-hand knowledge and when to doubt second-hand knowledge. If you have like accounts of different people from way back when, and it's broad, big, mass movements, it's not so easy to lie. You can't lie about what happened to masses of people because someone would say this didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
And that's how history starts getting developed. It's like the kings have always wanted to rewrite history into whatever they wanted. Except in Islam, they're not really effective. But they can't because people know what happened. The stories continue. They say, "Oh, this is how it went down." King can publish whatever propaganda he wants, but people will just grow the truth around it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting how you go back 2,000 years, though, how so much is kind of up in the air, but also understood. Like, you guys you're not even certain if Christ was a real person. That's wild to me. I know that was a troll, but I guess that's some people do hold that position. So
I think they're doing that to like undercut any acceptance of Christianity. To me,
that in itself is like a rewriting of history, or not. Maybe I wouldn't say rewriting, but a lie from your perspective.
Yeah, I think I don't see a lot of evidence to discredit the existence of a man named Jesus. I see plenty to discredit his divinity. That's child's play. But to discredit the existence of a kid named Jesus, that's kind of crazy.
Well, I find it more like if it was a sort of nothing burger, like I find it more interesting how was this legend able to grow so effectively, so quickly?
Well, listen, within the history of the Catholic Church, it depicts how it grew, and it very clearly grew after he was dead. So it like whatever might have existed while he was around, that's not Christianity. That was something that kid was up to. Maybe effective, maybe not, maybe overblown, maybe not. What Christianity is the story that Paul was publicizing. Right? He worked with the early churches, but like he was the Herzl of Christianity. He wrote like crazy till he died. It took him 10 years and he birthed Christianity. And I'm saying none of those people that joined were like, "Oh, hey, Jesus, nice to meet you." None of them knew that. They knew Paul. They knew Paul's writing. They knew Paul's certainty, Paul's zealotry. They loved Paul. Something about Paul caught the world's view. You got to realize what story is being popularized, who the author is. It's nice that Jesus is the main character of the book, but he didn't write it. He had no editorial say. None.
Yeah, that's like the thing I found most difficult with the Christianity. It's just that it's like there's two. I mean, I guess if I were to start at the beginning, then maybe it would all make sense and read the whole book. But there's so many different stories and accounts that for me, it's very difficult to. Like, I don't even know why these people are relevant. And when I found out, what was it like? I don't know if it was Paul or one of the bigger authors, for lack of a better term, but they didn't start writing about it up to like 9 years or some shit after, like a very long time after his death.
He had the books. The only way is with writings. You need someone that actually publishes.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your take on like the whole parting of the sea, all that craziness, Moshe Rabbeinu stuff? Like, is all of that just kind of a tale from the Jewish perspective, or?
I mean, it is a story, but we also got out of Egypt somehow. I don't have any better explanation for it than the story we've been saying since the beginning. It's also, honestly, if you dissect the claim, it's not that miraculous.
Which claim?
That the Jews negotiated their
What group of people? Obviously, it's totally different, but I don't know. I mean, I know you guys wouldn't want to just call that luck, obviously, but it's hard to kind of rationalize. Like, God, I don't know. I don't know. It's very weird. It's a very, like when I was 12 years old and I played Little League, I could hit the ball a mile, everyone, I wonder how much of these biblical stories are, like, somewhat, like, overemphasized. Like Ezekiel, it's way off topic, but the book of Ezekiel.
Yeah, exactly. Like metaphysics in it.
Bro, Ezekiel, I can look it up. That dude was either on psychedelics or he was fucking seeing aliens, basically. Not
a poetic fashion that doesn't ring as close to reality as other literature does to you.
Wait, say that again?
I'm saying it's a book. It's literature. It's written from a style. It's written in a different style from the 5 books of Moses. It's different style from Tehillim, from Mishlei.
You're giving me like much credit. I only know like a couple of verses of Ezekiel where he's talking about the wheels with the wheels and like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm saying that's prophetic writing. He's trying to provoke political action or moral improvement within society through his words. It's like a weird art form they had back in the day.
That nigga was tripping.
Let me put it this way. It's tricky to understand exactly how the Israelites would have interpreted Ezekiel in the time of its publishing, because it's hard to see what those Israelis were like. It's easier to get a sense of the slaves leaving Egypt, to understand what they're looking for, what their motivations are. The Jews in the state of Israel were divided over political issues. And it's just, Ezekiel trying to speak to their specific theological sensibilities of a particular era that he's alive in, it's not going to ring sensible to most of us, which is why when the Jews interpret Ezekiel and Isaiah and Amos and many of the other prophets, when it's a prophetic writing, they're pretty close to look at what the rabbis say, because we have an oral tradition explaining exactly what the fucking wheels and bronze angels are. There's a scholarship to identify what the original meaning was. The real point of the commentaries isn't to give their spin or answer questions. It's to try to preserve the understanding as it was explained to them by their teachers and so on.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know either religion well enough to be able to. It's a very odd play if he was intentionally trying to be artistic and using.
Oh, he was.
Why are you discounting the fact that he could have also been on a psychedelic trip?
Listen, prophecy, when it produces a writing, is a production. It's a writing. It's a work. It's an art at the end. And that's a communication with people. If you don't know how those people speak, you don't know what he's trying to communicate. There's books that I could pick up that are unintelligible to anyone because they're not communicating. In the case, like Chaucer, if you want to understand Chaucer, you can't focus on your understanding of English. You can't focus on dictionaries. You have to focus on the rough understanding of English in Chaucer's time, because that's what he's writing for. You need to know their conventions, even when Chaucer is breaking them, right? Like in the Torah, right? You have to know the Jewish grammar to understand the weird contradictory game they're playing with the word Elohim. They jump back and forth. They treat it like a single, and it's obviously a plural, and that's conveying some points that the rabbis have